Welcome to Miss Retro Reads. I don't have a lot of time today, but I didn't want to skip my reading because it's fun. We are continuing with Head Girl of the Chalet School. Chapter 10, Marie's News. Marie von Ecknew went home for the weekend to be present at Wanda's betrothal party. That was the beginning of it all. As was proved later, Joey had been invited to go too, but she had started a cold. So she was relegated to the sick room, while Marie went off with the aunt who came to bring her. It is a 13-hour run from Innsbruck to Vienna, where Marie lived, so they had to start on the Thursday night, as the feast was on the Friday. Sunday would see her on the return journey, so that she might miss as little school as possible. Lucky girl, grumbled Joey, when Marie came to say goodbye and tell her how sorry she was that they couldn't both be there as they had hoped. I say, you might bring me something from the show, a sprig of myrtle or something. I will bring all I can, replied Marie, who was very fond of Joey, in a quiet fashion, totally unlike Simone's rather hectic adoration. I will also bring some cakes from the pastry cooks you so much like. Marie, you're a gem. And some of those honey and nut things with the cream in them? I love them. Also a large piece of Wanda's betrothal cake, added Marie. I must go now. Auf Wiedersehen, she went off, and Jo burrowed under her blankets and growled to herself about her ill luck. Grizel, coming to sit with her later on, found her thoroughly disgruntled. Frida had no better luck, and Simone left the room in tears. On the Sunday, Jo was pronounced to be all right again, and was allowed to join the rest of them in the house. There was to be no going out for her for another day or two. The snow had ceased, but it was freezing hard, and there was a bitter wind. As it was, she was too thankful to get away from the sick room and matron, who was kind but dull, and be with all her friends again. So she made the best of things, though it was very tantalizing to see the pale winter sunshine turning the frozen snow into 1,000 sparkling diamonds, not go out in it. The robin stayed with her while the others went for a long walk in the morning. When they had returned, Miss Durant took the school baby for a brisk run to Seespitz, the tiny hamlet at the end of the lake. As it was Sunday, the juniors came over to the chalet to spend the day as usual, and there was enough noise made to justify Miss Maynard's remarks about monkey houses. This was the one day in the week when the girls might speak their own language all the time without let or hindrance, and they made the most of it. French, German, and Italian were the chief languages. But there was English, of course, and some Norwegian, and there were 4 Norwegian girls in the school now, and a little Hungarian girl. As Miss Wilson had once said, when they all got started, the Tower of Babel wasn't in it. In the afternoon they passed the time in the usual way, and café was taken by themselves, the staff having a much-deserved rest over at La Petite Chalet. The prefects were in charge, and Louise was in the kitchen with Rosa, the sister next in age to her. A treat also allowed the maid on Sundays. After a while the talk turned on to the legend which surrounds the place. The troll is full of stories, and Jo Bettany had learnt as many of them as possible, with an eye to the future, when she meant to use them in the books she was going to write. Frida's father had been born and brought up by the Terency, and he had told the future novelist many tales, rejoicing in the deep interest she showed in them. This afternoon, when they had finished their café and had carried the china back to the kitchen, as was the rule, the little ones insisted that Jo should tell them some of her stories. Tell how the Terency became a lake, Joey, pleaded Margia Stevens' little sister Amy. I love that story. I'm going to make a ballad of it some day. Like Jo, Amy had resolved to be a writer when she grew up too, but her bent was for verse, and she had written some very pretty things already. Their father was foreign correspondent to one of the big London dailies, and the two girls had lived in many places, leading a gypsy life till they had come to the school 4 years before this. Both were clever children, and their wandering years had given them a wide knowledge, as well as a fairly full vocabulary in more languages than little girls generally attain. Amy was a great favorite at school, and when she clamored for the tale, the rest joined in, and Joey, nothing loath, began at once. Once upon a time, she said, dropping her voice to a mysterious undertone, there was a great city where the lake now is. Its streets were thronged with citizens. Beautiful houses rose on either side, and in the center was a magnificent church. Every weekday, the streets rang with cries of the merchants and peddlers, the clanking of hammers on the beaten gold and silver work, which was the chief industry of the town, the shrill voices of chattering women buying for the needs of their households, and the clattering of wooden shoes on the wide pavements. On Sundays, the golden bells in the church steeple called folks to prayer, and the songs of sweet-voiced choristers rose to heaven from the hearts of those mountains, where men lived in such wonderful surroundings. But the day came when the great prosperity of the people made them careless of what they owed to God. They forgot him in their eager seeking after wealth and pleasure. Sunday by Sunday, the bells called them to come to worship him in vain, and things got to such a pass that the young lads used to play skittles in the aisles of the church, even while divine service was going on, and the very priests themselves never said them nay. A good old hermit who lived near warned them a judgment must fall on them, as it did on Sodom and Gomorrah, if they continued in their evil course. But they only mocked at him and paid no heed to his warnings. There came a Sunday when the sun shone down brightly on the city, and its ways thronged with people, men and women and children all going off on pleasure bent, having for the priests who droned out the mass so carelessly and badly that it was an insult to God. None had been near the church except the skittles players. All seemed well, and they thought they had nothing to fear. And then, even while the streets rang with careless laughter, a terrible thing happened. Jo dropped her voice a full tone, and some of the little ones crept nearer together. Water began to rise above the paved stones of the church, and to wash about the feet of the false priests. The skittles were overthrown, and the players scattered in terror. But still the water kept on rising. It flowed out of the church now, and the houses were soon awash to the sills of the windows. Terrified, the people tried to flee, but there was no safety for them. The water rose and rose with appalling rapidity, and ere the sun had sunk to his rest in the flaming west, there was no city left. Where it had been was a still blue lake, cradled among the mountains, and never more did anyone see the wicked people who had forgotten God in the days of their prosperity. Only on fine moonlit nights, when the summer stars are glowing in the sky, if you row across the Ternsey in a boat, you may see, if you look down through the water, the gilded spire of the church gleaming up from the depths, and if you listen, you may catch faintly the chime of its golden bells, rocked to and fro by the current. Jo told the story well. It was one that appealed to her. When she had finished, a deep sigh arose from the listening throng of girls, and there were cries for more. So she told them the story of the Barenkopf Mountains, which was rather similar, and which taught the same lesson, only in this case it was a wicked baron who was punished by the earth on which his castle had been built and raised up, so that the castle, baron, and all were flung down into the valley, and some of the earth with them, till they were covered from sight. It was very dark in the room, for someone had switched off the lights to give the tales more dramatic value, and the fire in the stove had sunk to a red glow, which made the shadows very big and fearsome. In their interest in Joe's narrative, no one noticed that the door had opened and shut again, and it came a terrific shock to everyone when someone came across the room asking in astonished tones, "What do you do then?" Wild screams arose at the shock, and Gertrude made a mad dive to switch on the electric light. When they could see once more, Marie Van Egnu stood before them, her eyes like saucers with astonishment. Never had she been welcome like this. "Marie!" cried Margia, characteristically, the first to recover herself. "When did you come?" "Just now, with Papa," replied Marie. "What is the matter with you all?" "It's Joey's fault," returned Evandine. "She was telling us boggy tales round here, and we never heard you till we did." Marie laughed at this Irish speech and kissed Joe, who was standing looking rather pale. She had succeeded in frightening herself as well as her audience, and was slow to recover. "Marie," she said, I thought it was the wicked Baron." "Me, I thought it was the devil," remarked Robin, who was still standing clutching Grizel, on whose lap she had been sitting. "Well, it is only me," returned Marie. "Papa has to go to München, and he said that he would bring me with him today instead of waiting till tomorrow. As Tante Sophie does not wish to go home yet, Paula, I have here a box of bonbons for you from Mamma, and some confitures from Tante Sophie." She held them out to her cousin, who took them rather dazedly. "Also, Wanda had 2 betrothal cakes, and I have one for us. It is outside in the car." "Was it a decent show?" asked Joey, who was recovering from her shock rapidly now. "But yes, it was very nice, and Wanda had on a new gown of white satin. There was a great feast and many speeches, and Wanda's Brutgram has sent chocolate for us all. I had a new frock too, blue silk, and we were very happy. Wanda had many betrothal gifts, and she is very happy. They will be wedded in July, and Paula and I are to be her bridesmaids. Wanda wants as many of us to be there as possible. She and Friedel will come to see us next term." Having scattered this information on them, she sat down by the stove and warmed her hands at the blaze which Grizel had just made. The others came round her and poured out questions demanding details. "Wanda would be like a princess," Simone said sentimentally. "Well, that's nothing fresh for her," said Joe amiably. The rest agreed with her. Marie Van Eckew occupied the place of school beauty now, but everyone who had known her sister was agreed that Wanda far outdid the younger girl. She had passed in a sort of legend as far as the school was concerned. The picture of her in her white frock with her wreath of myrtle and the string of pearls her uncle and the Graf von Rothenhaus, Paula's father, had given her, was lovely enough to please the severest critic. Herr Hauptmann Friedel von Gluck came in for a very second share of the interest, though Marie had assured the girls that he was very amiable and handsome as a prince out of Marchen. "Friedel's father is very kind," said Marie presently. "He asked me many questions about here and says that he thinks it's a very good school. Oh, and Joey, he knows all this part, for he used to climb the mountains round here when he was a boy, and he says he knows that there are some wonderful caves nearby. He says you reach them through a narrow opening in the mountains, and you go down and down till you come to them, and they are all glittering inside as if they are made of diamonds. He thinks that they must be under the lake, for he says they pass on to another cave, where there are stalactites very beautiful, but no one knows about them, for the people are afraid to venture, lest the water should break through." "I say, how interesting!" Joe's fancy was caught at once. "What else did he say about them, Marie?" But the others were not very enthusiastic and refused to listen to the chatter about caves. What they wanted was to hear more of the betrothal feast. Herr Rittmeister von Ecknu came to say goodbye to his daughter before they were satisfied, and Marie had to stop her tale, to kiss him, and to listen to his commands for good work and behavior. And then he had to say a few words to Joan Grisel, whom he knew quite well, and pat Marie Marini on the head. When he went out, some of them went with him to rescue the spoils of the feast from the car. And then the bell rang, and after that the juniors were packed off to bed, and the middles had to follow half an hour later. However, once they were in their pajamas and dressing gowns, Joe went through to Marie's cubicle, and sitting on the bed, tucked round her, proceeded to extract all that had been said about the caves. It was not much, but it was quite sufficient to excite Joe's imagination. I wonder where the opening is, she remarked, sitting with her knees hunched up and her hair all on end as usual. Wouldn't you be excited if some of us could find it? Just think. They might make a show place of it, and then they would need guides, and ever so many people would come, and the villagers would be able to make lots of money in the summer, so that they wouldn't be so poor. She spoke with fervor, for 4 years in the Tarns Valley had taught her how pitiably poor the peasantry were. They had only the summer in which to garner their harvest. In the winter they had to live on their summer earnings, and often that meant hard living and being on the verge of starvation for most of them. In the mountainous region, the trolleys pray for a short winter and a mild one. Otherwise, life is a bitter thing for them. In the summer, most of the men are cowherds, taking the cows up to the pastures on the grassy alms, which run like shelves along the lower slopes of the mountains, and live up there with them, many never coming down till the cows come down in the autumn. When the winter comes, they have to return to their homes in the villages, while the cattle are safely housed in sheds, where one man can do the work that 3 or 4 do from May to September or thereabouts. They have no other means of livelihood, and in their homes tragedy stalks near during a long or hard season. Joan knew this. She had come near it herself one year when a poor family had been obliged to drown the pups of their great St. Bernard, Zita, and had even spoken of getting rid of Zita also. Joey had managed to rescue one of the puppies, and Madge had bought him for her. He was now a magnificent fellow, living up on the Sun Alps, where he had more freedom than at school. The young head mistress had also taken care of Zita for the winter months, thus relieving the family of a heavy charge. After that, she had told them that if ever they were in such straits again, the big dog might winter at school. Since Zita's pups, when they arrived in the summer, were a source of income, the offer was gladly accepted, and Zita had been at the school part of the previous winter. So far, she had not come this year, for the snow had come late. But if it continued for long, the girls knew they might accept their great guest. Hence Joey's eagerness over the caves. Marie, however, was a girl of very different kind. She was by no means adventurous, and rather shrank from the idea of going down into the bowels of the earth to hunt for caves. I would rather not, Joe, she said, but perhaps some of the men might go. Oh, but it would be gorgeous if our girls did it, declared Joey. It would be like saying thank you for all they have done for us here. Well, I don't suppose we will be let to go, said Margia, who had strayed into the cubicle to listen to the conversation. Think of the fuss they made when Giselle went off up into the Turnjock, and that wasn't half so dangerous. It was jolly dangerous, said Joe. That beastly mist came down, and she was caught on the precipice. It was ghastly. Well, I don't see us getting permission to go hunting for caves in the mountains, insisted Margia. Madame would have a fit. She mightn't know till we had found it. Don't be silly. The very first thing they'd do if any of us went missing like that would be to ring them up at the Sanalp to see if we'd gone there. There was a good deal of truth in this. But what further Joe might have said on the subject was prevented by the ringing of the silence bell, and Miss Maynard came along 5 minutes later to switch their lights off. Chapter 11. Half-Term. The days passed quickly after this, too quickly, Grizel thought, as she counted the weeks of school life left her, and felt how the time was going. She was devoted to her school, and she dreaded the break that summer would bring. Always energetic, she devoted herself to doing all she could for the school, and amongst other things worked hard for the sale of work. "I'm sick of fret sewing," grumbled Joey and on Wednesday afternoon as she sat down to her treadle machine and proceeded to adjust a fresh saw blade. "As for the sale, I never want to hear it again." "But there's so little time," said Grizel. "It will be half-term in 3 days' time, and after that we shall be in the thick of it before we know where we are." "Thank goodness it is half-term," said Joe vigorously, "and thank goodness the snow stopped falling at last. Louise says that she thinks there will be no more now till the thaw. We always get a little then. I say, Grizel, do you think we'll have a flood this year?" "Shouldn't think so. Not since they deepened the bed of the stream again." "We shall be safe enough, with the ditch round the place. I should think any flood there was would be drained off completely." "You never know. Look at the Mississippi floods. They seem to get those every year, whatever they do." "Oh, talk sense. This isn't the Mississippi, or anything like it. It's a different kind of soil, for one thing." Joe cut a piece of her new puzzle and then sat back. "We aren't having any excitement this term. We generally have something thrilling at least once in the term. I don't count your accident, 'cause it didn't affect all of us, except that we all had to have a fit about you. I mean, like the flood we had 2 years ago, or the fire last summer term, when the fireball dropped during the thunderstorm. That's what I call excitement." "I dare say you do," retorted Grizel. "Personally, I prefer a quiet life. There's the sale at the end of the term, if you want any excitement, and we are going up to the Sanalp for the half-term. You be contented with that, and get on with your puzzles. I want 20 if you can manage them." "I've got 9 done," said Joe. "This is the 10th. I don't believe you'll sell more than 15 anyway. Even if I can get them done, I wish Friday was here. It'll come jolly soon. You'd better wish for decent weather while you're about it. I know that it's unlikely to snow again, but if a howling wind gets up, we shan't be allowed to go out. That path is fairly well exposed to a west wind, and it's not too nice in the north gale." "Oh, the wind's going to stay put," declared Joe. "It couldn't be so maddening as to rise when we want it to be calm." "The wind never does do what you want," said Grizel. "I say, Joey, do get on. It will be time for the singing soon, and you could get a lot done now if you chose to." Joey grunted, but made her treadle go as fast as she could, cutting the puzzle carefully, but at such a speed that it was small wonder that her saw suddenly broke off. "That settles it. I'm not going to fuss to stick another in," she announced. "Plato's arrived already, and the bell will go in a minute. I've cut a third of this beastly thing, and I've only 3 saws left. Someone going to Innsbruck on Saturday will have to fetch me some more." "I will buy them, Joey," said Frida. "Thanks awfully. I'm going to give it a rest till after the exeat. There's the bell." She finished putting her work away and then dashed off to the singing class, where Mr. Denny, Plato, to the girls, proceeded to be more eccentric than usual. He always spoke in the language of Tudor times, and since his one idea was his art, he made many startling statements. From his point of view, all education should be based on music, and he quoted from Plato's Republic in season and out, hence his name. The rest of the week was full of hard work, though Jo obstinately refused to touch her fretwork again, in spite of all Grizel could say. It was a beautiful day with a nip of frost in the air, just enough to make brisk walking enjoyable, and the climb up of the Sanalp a real treat. The robin was to be carried up the path on her father's back, he having come over to the Brassow to fetch the three girls, and the others would scramble and climb as best they could. They started off about 11 o'clock, for it would take them 4 hours, and the daylight would be fading by 2, since the mountains cut it off. Well wrapped up, they tramped down to the lakeside, and there Captain Humphreys strapped on their skis for them, and they set off across the frozen lake. They were all expert skiing now. Even the robin managed well on her small blades, and they were soon at Seespitz, the nearest point to the foot of the mountain of the Sanalp. There they took off their skis and left them with Frau Hamel, mother of two of the girls, Sophie and Gretel, who were still in school before they set off along the narrow path till they came to the foot of the mountain. "Gorgeous day," said Joey, stopping to sniff the fresh, bracing air. "I do love a sharp, clear day like this. Think what it'll be like in England now." Captain Humphreys smiled as he lifted the robin. Preparatory to beginning the climb. "I have not been in England for a good many years now, but I can imagine it. Wet, cold, slushy," said Jo, with a pause between each of the words. "I love England, of course, but oh, I loathe her winters." "Me, I do not like them at all," said the robin from her perch on her father's shoulder. "I like the Turnsey, though, and I love going to see Tante Marguerite." "We all do," said Grizel, as she struggled up the rocky path. "Come on, Jo, don't lag behind." "It's so slippery," complained Joey as she scrambled breathlessly after the others. "Never mind, we shall soon be there," said the captain, who was swinging over the ground as if he had no burden at all. Then he set his little girl down and went back to help the older girls. It took 3 hours hard scrambling to bring them to the easier path, which led finally to the Sanalp, and the sun had disappeared by that time. Joey stood and looked down at the valley below. The lake was black with its ice, and the snow lay white all round it. Immediately beneath them was Seespitz, with its gaths and villas. Farther along was Brachau, where there were 2 or 3 farmhouses and the ferry landing. Beyond lay the pine woods, black against the snow, and beyond them the great limestone crags and peaks of the mountains. In the west the snow was sinking in a glory of saffron light, which told of high winds for the morrow. But Jo paid no heed to this at the moment. She stood there, her little pointed face glowing with the beauty of it all, her black eyes soft and unfathomable. "Come on," said the matter-of-fact Grizel, at last, when her patience was worn. "It's after 3, and we've got half an hour's walk yet before we reach the Sanalp." With a deep sigh, Joey turned her back on the glory, and they set off on the last part of their journey. It was very easy now, so the robin was walking, her hand in her father's, her tongue going at a great rate, and Jo and Grizel came behind them, arm in arm, for the path was fairly broad whereabouts, and saying little. Jo was still entranced by the memory of the loveliness she had witnessed, and Grizel was tired and out of breath. They reached the Alps itself at last, and here they found Dr. Jem waiting for them. "Hello," he said. "I saw you people from the sanatorium, so I waited for you. I've got the runabout here, so I'll take you all along to Die Blume in it. Come along. You'll be at home in 10 minutes or less now." "Thank goodness," said Grizel as she fell into step between them. "I'm plumped." You're like Hamlet, my child, fat and scant of breath, he said, teasing. I'm not fat, returned Grizel indignantly. I'm out of training, if you like. We've had no chance of it this term, with such awful weather. But fat I am not. You silly Grizel, said Joey. You always rise to Jem. I can't think why you do it. Grizel laughed, her momentary indignation forgotten, as they rounded a curve and saw the doctor's little runabout, standing between the steps that led up to the great sanatorium. Well, I'm tired anyway. I'm jolly glad you saw us and waited, Dr. Jem. You're late, aren't you? He said. I know Madge expected you earlier than this. It was such a pull up, explained Joey. It's beastly slippery there, too. We're here now, anyway, and that's all that matters, laughed Grizel as she slipped into her seat and held out her arms for the robin. Can you squeeze in, Joe? Rather. How's Uncle Ted going to manage, though? I'm going to walk, said the captain. I have a call to make at Wild Villa before I come up to Die Bloom. Tell Mrs. Russell I'll be along presently, will you? Very well, said the doctor. All safe, you people? All right. So long, Humphreys. He pressed the starter, and they were off and blowing jerkily over the snow ground. I don't think much of your roads, chuckled Joey. A bit on the bumpy side, aren't they? A bit, agreed the doctor. We are going to have them seen to during the spring. Here we are. Tumble out and run along in. Madge will be waiting for you. They scrambled out and ran up the long path which led to the door, where Madge, wrapped in a shawl, was waiting for them. In the summer, the ground on either side would be a beautiful flower garden, but now it was white and bare, with a few miserable-looking bushes here and there. They raced to the door where their hostess was standing, and were all caught in a clump as she pulled them in. How late you people are! I was beginning to think something had happened, and you weren't coming at all. Come along in, straight upstairs, and get your things off and change your shoes. You know your rooms, don't you? Joey's next to ours. Grizel's on the other side of hers. Robin, you are to sleep in Papa's dressing room, just opposite. See to her, Joey. I'm busy cooking. Joey nodded and they ran upstairs along the passage till they came to their rooms. They were very dainty, furnished in the fashion of the country, with panelled walls and high whitewashed ceilings. The beds had white tinting like curtains, and one or two copies of famous pictures hung on the walls. Jo's room communicated with her sister's, and the Robins with her father's. None of them had brought any clothes, for they kept some there in case of need. They got out of their outdoor things, changed their sturdy boots and stockings for silk dancing sandals, brushed their hair, a very necessary thing in Joey's case, and finally ran downstairs again. I'm hungry, observed the robin. Are you, dearie? Well, Marie is bringing café, and so you won't be hungry long, replied Madge, lifting the small girl onto her knee. That's a mercy, declared Joey. I'd have had to tighten my girdle or something if you had wanted us to wait much longer. Here's Jem again. I say, Jem, I've nearly finished my story. The only thing I can't decide is what to do about marrying them. Aren't you going to marry them? Asked Madge, who had been privileged to read the first part of this tale. I think I should, Joey. What else can you do with them? I could kill Raymond off, said Jo. And then Adelaide could what? Demanded Jim. Go into a convent, suggested Grizel. Of course not, idiot. She's not a Catholic. Marry them, of course, said Madge. Don't make them unhappy. Even if it's only a story, let them end up all right. Lots of stories don't, argued Jo, as well as she could with a mouthful of cake. Look at the Tale of Two Cities, and the Old Curiosity Shop, and the Mill on the Floss. It requires genius to write a tragedy, Jo, said her brother-in-law. I grant you that Dickens and George Eliot got away with it, But nothing is worse than the mawkish rot that some people write. Jo had just remembered that Madge would know nothing about the caves, and she promptly poured out all she had gleaned from Marie, together with her own theories on the subject. The doctor was interested at once. I say that's interesting, he said. When I was last in Vienna, I met this open-air fiend, Professor von der Witt. You remember, Madge? He said he thought there ought to be something of that kind whereabouts, but I don't think he knew anything definitely. I must write and let him know about this. A ring at the telephone put a stop to their chatter just then, and Jim went to answer it. He came back looking serious. It's the sanatorium. That poor fellow is worse again. Maynard thinks he can't last many hours now. I must go, dear. Madge rose at once. 7 months as a doctor's wife had taught her many things. Her face was very grave as she followed her husband from the room. The girls looked at each other miserably. Only the robin seemed untouched. Papa, is it someone going to paradise? She asked. Yes, my pet, he replied quietly. Let's go and see Rufus, suggested Grizel, shying away from the subject. He's in the shed, Captain Humphreys, isn't he? Yes, said the captain. Go through the kitchen, children, and don't stay long. Perhaps you had better go and bring him here. They went off to call Joey's best-loved possession, a magnificent specimen of a magnificent breed, and presently returned with him, just as Madge entered. The robin's father had gone, but she joined in the romping of the others. 6 o'clock brought the baby's bedtime, and she was whisked off, Rufus following to have her bathe, while the elder girls settled themselves with books. There was a long silence in the pretty room, and then Jo put her book down. Grizel? Yes? Grizel, isn't it awful, just when we were having a jolly time, that poor man over there is dying? Grizel nodded. She was older than Jo, but she had not thought as deeply as the younger girl. Her mind had been running on the same subject, while she had been pretending to be buried in her book. She had neither the robin's baby faith nor Jo's contemplative nature, and she shied away from her thoughts. You'd better go on with your book, she said. It's nearly time for bed. Jo returned to the pages, but she was not following them. Her thoughts were all on the mysterious thing that was happening at the sanatorium. Madge divined it as soon as she entered the room after tucking up the robin, and she crossed over to her sister. Joey, you need not be sorry for this poor fellow. He will be joining those he loves best tonight. The priest was there this morning, and he is prepared. The two girls came and sat on the floor beside her. Madame, what is death? Asked Grizel. Just falling asleep with God, to awake in his presence. That's all, said Madge Russell. Then why are we afraid of it? Because it means a change, and most of us are afraid of changes, and we don't understand it. But, Grizel, there is nothing to fear really, any more than there is anything to fear when we fall asleep at night. Grizel sat silent, thinking this over. God is with us, though, through it all, asked Joey. Yes, Jo, he never leaves us if we have faith in him. It was not many weeks later that this came back to both girls in another very different place, and those quiet sentences helped them to face what looked like certain death with courage and calm. Now as they sat there, the telephone bell shrilled. Madge rose and answered it. Presently she came back. The two faces turned to her with questioning in their eyes. She nodded. Yes, he has fallen asleep, and will waken in paradise. They said no more, but the rest of that evening was a quiet one. Their weekend had begun sadly, but somehow they were not as sad as they had thought they would be, and the event cast no gloom over their holiday. Jim had not returned by 9 o'clock, when Madge insisted on Jo and Grizel going to bed, since they were tired from their scramble. I'd like to go on with my book, Joey protested. You may do that in the morning, said her sister serenely. Bedtime for you now. Your eyes are like saucers, and Grizel's aren't much better. Off you go, both of you. I'll come round and put the lights out presently. Grizel was already asleep when she went to them, but Joey was lying awake. That's all it is? She asked, apropos of nothing, as her sister bent to kiss her. Madge understood. Yes, Joe, that's all. I shan't forget, said Joey. Oh, how tired I am. Good night, Madge. And we will continue with Chapter 12, which is The Robin is Lost, next Wednesday. Thanks for listening to Miss Retro Reads.